Now, here on the ground, while it certainly does seem as if Gaddafi's men are pushing back and winning the battle here, on the international stage, it's the rebels who are really coming out in the front. Just yesterday, France was the first country in the international community to officially recognize the rebels as the voice of the Libyan people, the legitimate voice of the Libyan people. As you can imagine, this has angered people here, particularly in Tripoli, where I've been speaking to people. They are confused and they are angry with the international community's response. Now, the latest report from the International Red Cross is that the country is in the midst of a civil war. But again, speaking to people here, moving around, you certainly don't get that sense on the ground. And many Libyans that I've been talking to make the point that the foreign media tends to exaggerate the situation, often putting drama ahead of reality. Let's take a look. There's a lot more haggling on the international stage over the merits of intervention and a no-fly zone than the bargaining taking place in downtown Tripoli market. Shops here close early nowadays. People are afraid, and many of the Africans who used to work here have fled the country. And the argument that Libya is on the brink of civil war, so foreign intervention is needed, seems to ring a little hollow.
There have been several hundred people killed, but that's not a huge level of violence. It certainly isn't a global level of violence that would normally merit intervention.
The reason they're interested with Libya is about the oil. You think we'd be in Iraq if the major export there was broccoli?
So as leaders meet in Brussels to discuss the fate of a country hundreds of miles away, many Libyans are saying it's their mess and they'll clean it up.
Dmitry Rogozin is Russia's envoy to NATO. He's expressed concern over NATO's plans for military intervention.
Conflict inside Libya has become protracted. Many Arab leaders say as much. Even though the attitude of Mr. Gaddafi in the Arab world has always been highly complex, and despite the pressure that France and the UK are bringing to bear on the Arab League, we cannot say that everyone would be wildly enthusiastic to see a Western invasion in Libya. There is yet another important aspect that Arab analysts are warning about. They say that Mr. Gaddafi, if faced with foreign intervention, will immediately become a martyr, a victim in the eyes of the whole Arab world, and a very popular person. And no one wants that to happen.
Are you concerned by France's call for aerial bombardment of the country?
It's a big problem how to do it. From the technical military point of view, NATO doesn't have a clear idea about the level of training and quality of Libya's air defenses. Let's assume that a country which begins military intervention by launching an air attack will lose several combat aircraft. Libya possesses some sufficiently modern, including portable anti-aircraft missile systems. Who will bear responsibility for the first air casualties? No one. This is why, I believe, two processes are currently in progress. On the one hand, aggressive rhetoric is used and political consultations are held inside the Western states and in the UN Security Council. Work is underway to identify reputable opposition figures. But on the other hand, military planning is in progress that considers very different options. AWACS planes are in the air, space reconnaissance systems and naval reconnaissance are fully operational as well, trying to reveal the real situation in Libya, the organization and strength of the Libyan armed forces, and the situation within the framework of regional, provincial conflicts. The info is fed to NATO's relevant military structures, but its readiness for action is equal to zero.
Libya is rich in oil. Is that why the US is so interested in the country?
I think if Libya were just a banana-growing country, there wouldn't be so much interest in its domestic situation, including in the humanitarian sphere. Of course, Libya is a big enough energy supplier to Europe. Certain countries, like Italy for example, are heavily dependent on Libyan deliveries. Others are not so much dependent, but either way, Libya's share is considerable. We know that NATO, for example, puts energy security matters at the top of its main agenda. For this reason, I think that this factor has a most direct bearing on the speed of the West's decision-making regarding Libya. No one wants to let the conflict become protracted. Everyone wants it to be over as quickly as possible so as to be reassured about the guarantees of energy supplies to Europe. I think it's a very important problem. Aside from that, there is yet another factor. Some major Western oil companies have an axe to grind where their concessions in oil development projects in Libya are concerned. They are quite likely to be pushing certain Western countries towards hasty decisions with regard to an intervention in Libya. They think they'll be able to follow the military and thus get a unique access to Libya's oil riches. So this factor is also taken into account and discussed.
Would unilateral invasion by NATO be a war crime?
Of course. Any invasion would be it an initiative of NATO as a whole or of any NATO member state. If an action is not authorized by the UN, it is an illegal intervention. But what I am saying now is not a warning. It is just a statement of fact. As a matter of fact, many people inside NATO agree with Russia. Note the position of the U.S. on the situation in Libya. Washington is being very restrained, if not passive here. Some are laughing at the overly zealous France and the UK, saying that those two are running ahead of Uncle Sam. Nobody knows why this is happening and whether there is some common scenario in place. I think that the U.S. administration would not like to take any hasty actions against Libya right now. Most likely, they're monitoring the situation closely, and preparations to possible military engagement are perhaps in progress, but a new war is dangerous for the U.S. now, especially with the presidential elections looming ahead.
Are there any conditions under which you would support foreign military intervention in Libya?
Facts, that's all. Only facts on the table of the UN Security Council saying that weapons were used against peaceful civilians in Libya, or heavy military machinery was used against humanitarian targets, may force the Security Council to consider measures more substantial than political sanctions against the regime. The thing is, we don't have any facts. We have reports from the BBC, CNN, and other media featuring some machine gunner firing his machine gun in the air. At the same time, we don't see any aircraft attacking. Instead, we see people applauding the gunner for looking so cool. If there were a real aircraft attack in progress, they wouldn't be applauding. The footage we see on American and British channels looks fake. They create an illusion of military action. Where are the aircraft? Where are the bomb raids? Where is the destruction and casualties we hear so much about? If all that is true, evidence should now be on the table of the Security Council. Doing that requires carrying out the decisions already passed by the Council, including the creation of special committees that should establish the facts. Unless the facts are established, the Council cannot take the responsibility of judging something that doesn't exist.